Now, just like the old crisps dilemma, whether or not it was Tato or King, salt and vinegar or cheese and onion, when it comes to tea, we also have our dilemma. Do you prefer lions or berries? We prefer lions, but you can make your tea however you like. Get yourself a teapot and drop in 2 to 3 tea bags for every 3 cups of tea that you want to make. Put in your water, about 6 ounces for every cup of tea. Now leave that sit there for about 3 minutes. When the 3 minutes has passed, don't stir it. You'll need to swirl it around 3 times anti-clockwise. Women back in Ireland used to believe that stirring up a teapot would be creating or stirring up a storm for the fishermen on the coast. So just swirl it around 3 times anti-clockwise. Now you pour your tea into your cup. You can drink this black, or like we do, a little drop of milk, sometimes even a bit of sugar.
Now when I have tea, I almost always want something nice to eat with it. So we're going to show you how to make digestives. If you don't know what digestives are, they may sound like some sort of weird medication to help digestion, but they're not. They're little cookies that are made with whole wheat flour. Now let's say that you can't find any flour. We can make the cousin of the digestive, the hobnob. The only difference is that hobnobs are made out of oats. So we need to make some oat flour. Put your oats in your blender and blitz them for about 10 seconds or until you have a nice fine flour. I made a combination of the two and I used about half oat flour and half whole wheat flour. Then I added my sugar, my baking powder, and some cubed butter. Now you want this butter to be cold because we're going to take our fingertips or a fork and rub the butter into the flour mixture. This process is very similar to making pie dough, and you can also use this recipe to make pie dough instead of individual cookies. But once you've got that worked in, it should look like chunky sand. Then you're going to add your milk and do this 1 tablespoon at a time because depending on what kind of flour you used, you'll need more or less milk. I like this recipe because it's one of the few baking recipes that don't have to be super precise. You can see that I've eyeballed a lot of the ingredients here and they turned out just fine. Now you want to use just enough milk to bring the dough together, but you don't want it to be wet because we need to be able to roll them out. So flour your board lightly and dump your dough onto it. Grab your rolling pin and roll that out to about 1/8 of an inch thick. Then grab a cookie cutter or a glass and cut out your cookies. Keep these scraps because you can roll them out again and get more cookies. If you don't want to deal with the scraps, you can just cut these into squares and bake them like that. So put those on your cookie tray and poke them a few times with a fork. This is just going to ensure that they stay flat and don't puff in the middle. Then these guys need to bake for 20 minutes. I flipped them about 15 minutes in. I don't know why I didn't just use a spatula, but I flipped them because the bottoms were getting a little too brown. We need to make sure these are in the oven for the full 20 minutes because they need to dry and be crispy all the way through. This makes for the perfect cookie to dip in your tea. Once these are out of the oven, put them on a cooling rack. Please just use a spatula. I don't know why I used my hands. It hurt. But while those are cooling, let's make the chocolate coating. I'm using the best chocolate that there is, but whatever chocolate you have will work just fine. Put that in your bowl and add a little coconut oil just to thin it out. I microwaved this for 15 seconds, gave it a stir, and then microwaved it for another 15 seconds. And then you should have this nice glossy spreadable chocolate. Then just top your digestives with the mixture and spread it out. You can also just dip the tops of the cookies in the chocolate as well. In Ireland, tea is not just a hot drink to warm you up on a cold night. It's a way of social connection. Or you meet someone on your way to the shops and they'll say, listen, I can't chat now, but come around for tea tomorrow. And that's all that needs to be said. You know that you can knock on the door at any time the next day and you'll have a nice cup of tea and a long chat waiting for you. Now, that's not something that we have in America, and I wish we did. Not only because I drink about 4 cups of tea a day, but because I want to be able to invite someone for tea and have them know that they don't have to stay for long, but that it's just a small amount of time for us to spend together.
So let's say we have some wholemeal flour. You don't know what to do with it. Well, you make brown bread, of course. Brown bread is nice to make because you just dump everything into a bowl and mix. You dump your flour, your brown sugar. We didn't have any brown sugar, so we just added a little molasses with our white sugar. Then you add your oat bran. If you don't have any of that, you can just add wheat germ, chia seeds, or just leave it out altogether. Then you add your salt. And here you can add an egg. But we're making this loaf vegan. Fabian. What is that?
It's the juice from a can of chickpeas that can also be used as a vegan egg replacer in some recipes.
Then add your butter and some buttermilk. We're using some cashew buttermilk that we made, but if you don't have buttermilk, just add a tablespoon of vinegar to some regular milk. Let it curdle for about 10 minutes before you add it in. Then add your baking soda. This is going to be our leavening agent, so we don't need any yeast for this bread. Then mix that, put it into a greased loaf tin or some other kind of baking dish. Smooth the top out, then you need to carve a cross into the bread and sprinkle a small handful of oats on top. Put that into the oven at 400 degrees and bake it for about 45 to 50 minutes. Then take it out and let it cool for about 20 minutes before you cut into it. Now after 20 minutes it's still going to be warm, so when you spread the butter on there, it'll melt right in. You can add some jam on this as well and you have the perfect thing to eat while you're drinking your cup of tea. And remember, the world is a better place because you are in it, and we can do this.